Hello friends, AVP here on the ground working overtime to bring you the latest on the NearX Exploit from Stader Labs. We will be covering the NearX reimbursement plan. I'm actually quite satisfied. It is very comprehensive and it has several categories that look into most of the potential scenarios. So if you have been affected, we will be covering how you can claim your Near back. There will be timestamps down below, so feel free to skip around. But before we get there, I just want to have a really quick recap on what happened in this scenario, make sure that we understand what went wrong. And I guess that the main objective would be to make sure that there is the ability to build back trust, not just on Stader, but on the Near ecosystem more broadly. Normally, when there is a hack, there is a very unfortunate domino effect where people just start mistrusting every smart contract or the DeFi ecosystem in general. So it'd be really good to understand how it happened and how we can mitigate this in general as an ecosystem going forward. And also, the other people affected will be getting the Near back. So the losses seem to be mitigated. So let's get started. If you want to read the official version, there is a Near Stader incident report, but I'll tell you the unofficial, the untold story. So as it happens, I am the exploiter. I'm kidding. That would be hilarious, wouldn't it? So I was indeed the person that discovered the exploit, and the timing was fascinating. So Ref Finance has the stable pools. So on my screen, I'm showing now the source section, which actually stands for stable pools. And on the Near stable pools, we have ST Near, which is the one that I monitor often, and there is also Linear and NearX. What I noticed is that most of the pools were unbalanced, meaning that there was an opportunity to make a small profit by basically buying or selling from the pool and then redeeming the underlying asset from the protocol. However, the NearX pool was very unbalanced. And there were a couple of things that were strange about this because it was so early in the protocol days that most of the flows of money were going in one direction. I did wonder for a moment, perhaps the reason why the pool is unbalanced is because Stader doesn't offer liquid unstaking. So the only way to get your Near out immediately would be to use Ref. However, something was strange. About an hour after I noticed this trend, we had the Ref Finance Community Board, and live on the call with 13 community members present, we started noticing this issue, talking about different possibilities. We performed some swaps ourselves, trying to rebalance the pool and test out what was going on. And in real time, we noticed that the exchange rate started to get extreme. So the way that stable pools work is because both assets are technically the same, like the exchange rate is fixed, you can always get the underlying real exchange rate from the protocol. The pools are allowed to become unbalanced and the price difference is very small. This is very unusual and it's very specific for stable pools. This is how we give you a better service. However, there is a point in a stable pool, I think it's like over 90% unstable, where it switches from a normal stable pool to a regular pool or something like that, to a regular pool. So the price starts moving much more aggressively. This may have been like the 90% inflection point in that range. From that point onwards, it literally made no sense to continue performing swaps because the rate that you were getting was really bad. It was 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 10-to-1, 30-to-1. I can see the logic of people that were swapping in, and some of us did for research purposes. You have one Near, you get 30 NearX, some maybe worth a try. But on the way out, 100% a red flag. There is no reason at all why anyone in their sane mind, even if you were insane, you would probably not swap one NearX for whatever fraction of a 30 that is. So at this point, we immediately raised the red flags. The Rev team got in communication with Stader Labs and with Proximity, and we started alerting some of our engineers. And within 45 minutes, the contract was stopped. Now, I understand that if you're a user that incurred some losses, any loss is a bad situation to be in, but the speed at which the ecosystem moved and the ability to be able to contain the damages really have to be highlighted. There are some elements there. It being early days, Stader was not present on borrowing platforms like Borrow Cash, That would have been a second vector of attack. The way that the exploiter was able to cash out was to swap out the NearX that he was creating, and I'll explain how he did that in a minute, for real Near on the pool. And there were only two places where he could do that. There was Refinance and there was Jumbo. Moving on to the technical bits, to understand how the exploit occurred, let's just really quickly cover how liquid staking works. Liquid staking providers are basically one layer in between the user and the validators. So the user provides the Near to the liquid staking provider. The liquid staking smart contract delegates that Near to the validators. So all throughout this drama, the real Near was always secure with the validators. The issue that occurred was in that middle layer, or the Stader Labs smart contract. And the key functionality here is that when you provide one Near to the liquid staking provider, in this case, Stader Labs, the smart contract is meant to give you one NearX back. That relationship between the amount of Near going in and the amount of NearX being issued by the smart contract going out must be, 1-to-1. The exchange rate changes, but it's a first in, first out. Like the amount of NearX is directly proportional to the Near being staked in the validators, and you should always be able to redeem the NearX or the yield-bearing token by the Near on the validators. So what went wrong? The exploiter found a way to increase the supply of NearX. At this point, the amount of Near backing that NearX is out of whack. And knowing that he would not be able to redeem the NearX from the validators, he went straight for the liquidity pools. It was a quick and easy kill. So how did this happen? Okay, so let's look at the report from the auditing firm. The report after the exploit, the firm did not find this when they were auditing, would have been helpful. So there's a nuance, there's a quirk, there's a consideration when working on the Near protocol at a technical level. I'm going to read from the report because I find this fascinating and I don't understand it from memory. The technical nuances that led to the exploit are as follows. When reading from storage, Near creates a snapshot that is loaded to runtime memory. Put your hands up if you don't know what that means. When Near attempts to load the same variable into runtime memory, it creates a copy. So far, so good. Stader's smart contract was written with the assumption that the runtime variable would always point to the same object in memory, aka not a copy. Because of this, when a token transfer was executed with sender and receiver being the same user, and this is a key bit, the exploiter was sending NearX tokens to himself. It resulted in two variables corresponding to the balances. Both were associated with the sender. However, one's balance was reduced and the other's balance was increased. I'm probably going to stop reading now because it makes no sense and you can read the screen. The point of the story is sending any P41 tokens, 141, to yourself is a known issue on Near because of this nuance that Halborn is describing, the way that the variable works and that the memory is copied. This is why the Near wallet does not allow you to send tokens to yourself, which means that the exploiter must have used CLI or command line interface. This also leads me to think that the exploiter must have been well versed in Near code because I've spoken with engineers that have been in the ecosystem for 1 year plus and they know about this. They think that this is core. They are actually shocked that the auditors didn't pick up on this or that the engineers didn't think of this, especially for the nature of the product. But with every bad thing, something good comes up. I am sure that from now onwards, or at least everyone involved in the ecosystem now, will know to check for this, hopefully to implement the correct structure in their smart contracts, and if not, to exploit the next project that doesn't. Now moving on to the good bit. Compensation plan. So there were some tense moments of silence, some angry people on the Telegram channel. I may have been one of them, but I was just trying to sympathize with the people that were angry, and I was trying to translate their frustration, and most importantly, I did something really special. I don't want to take credit for this one, but I did message the moderators and some of the teams, and I tried to lay out some of the scenarios in which people may have lost money and to revise some of the assumptions, and this will become clear in the compensation plan. I'll give you an example. One of the assumptions was that if you were swapping into the pool after the exploit, then you were doing it in a malicious way or trying to take advantage of the situation. Some people may have, but the reality is, up until we realized that there was indeed an exploit, we can't really assume ill intent of people because we didn't know that there was anything going wrong. But for the exploiter, there could have just been a really good exchange rate going on. Like, I started arbitraging that pool when it went over 75%. So you can start to see how in the midst of so much commotion, there may have been some misunderstanding or assuming ill intent, maybe confusing the exploiter with average users. So I'm actually really happy to see that the Stader team either took my advice on board or had a reasoning along the same lines. And they've actually created a very comprehensive guide that lays out the different buckets for eligibility on who will be able to claim their NEAR in case that they incurred losses, and the exchange rates at which they will be able to claim their NEAR. I will be linking to all the things I will be mentioning on the show notes below, including the links, the tweets, the blog post, everything will be there. So if you don't want to listen to me rambling for 15 minutes, just go and check that out. So let's go to the Medium post that Stader just shared. As I just mentioned, they outline the user eligibility for reimbursement, the exchange rate, and they provide some details on the upcoming contract migration and relaunch. I'll put the link down below so you can go read in detail. The key things that I want to highlight is that there are basically two categories to understand. The first one is the pre-exploit snapshot. So the blog post identifies that the exploit occurred on block 7213341, and they are reassuring all NearX users that for people that had either NearX in their wallets, so they were just holding on to NearX, for users that had NEAR in the form of NearX in unstaking period or NEAR that was ready to be withdrawn from the NearX platform. This is important because when they post a smart contract, they post all the functions. So even if you had NEAR there waiting to be withdrawn, it can't be withdrawn at the moment. And then finally, and this is perhaps the largest cohort of people affected, would be people that had NearX in the LP pool. And the reason why I mentioned that this is the largest cohort of people affected is because if we think about this logically, the people that were just holding on to NearX or that had NEAR ready to be withdrawn from the smart contract, that is a pretty clear cut. We can make a relationship between 1-to-1. You have good NearX and there is NEAR in the validators. Remember, the key problem that Stader has to solve now is how do they distribute the existing NEAR, the real NEAR on the validators onto the new smart contract? Who do they give it to? Considering that there's a lot of NearX out there that is not actually backed. So if you held NearX in the first place, you're good. The problem becomes the LP pool because for no fault of their own, the people that put in NearX and real NEAR are now holding a lot of NearX that doesn't have any backing. So it's really good to see that they will be covering for the people in the LP pool. The second criteria was the one that I was actually the most impressed by, and I guess the one that I was also looking forward to the most because is the one that covers me by a fair bit. They go on to explain that the Stader smart contract was completely paused about 45 minutes after we reported it. They include the specifics of the block, and they explain how all the transactions that occurred in those crucial hours between the exploit happening, it getting discovered, and the smart contract pausing, and this is where I just mentioned we should give people the benefit of the doubt, how that will be treated. The during the exploit snapshot will capture several categories, and it gets more interesting as we go. So the first one would be near staked in the Stader dApp, so it's just a continuation of the previous category. The second one would be NearX unstaked on the Stader app, so if you had already requested to unstake. Also a continuation of the previous category. And let's just skip to the good bit. 4, 5, and 6. Swapping of NEAR for NearX on Ref and Jumbo LP. Honestly, I think this would be most people. So this would be the user putting in 1 NEAR and getting 30 NearX back. The fifth category, I'm not entirely sure there were many people swapping NearX for NEAR at those really terrible exchange rates other than the exploiter, but I guess it's good that they're being considered. And then finally, The one that was really messing with people's mind as well was what happened if I withdrew liquidity. Say you noticed the pool was going crazy and you pulled funds out to mitigate some losses. You may be in some sort of limbo. So the good thing is that all these groups are being taken into account. So now that we understand the two key categories for eligibility, then we have the details on the reimbursement. So the first thing is based on the pre-exploit snapshot, all the NearX and Near will be sent directly to the user's Near wallet address. It seems like you don't have to do any extra steps. The snapshot has been taken, and the NearX and the Near will be delivered, airdropped directly to your wallet. The proportion and the amount by which it will be delivered is in the exchange rate and conversion section below. I'm not entirely sure what the reimbursement method will be for that second category, but it's really good to know that it will be reimbursed in some way. And then finally, the existing NearX token will be phased out and a new NearX will be issued. This makes sense because there's a lot of existing NearX with no backing. So it'd be really interesting to see what they call the new token. Maybe it's going to be NearXX. Maybe it's going to be Near triple X. Hey. Okay, so moving on to the juicy bit, the exchange rate and conversion. There were a lot of people wondering if they were suddenly rich because they were able to swap one Near for 1,000 NearX. As it happens, common sense has prevailed, and the exchange rate that will be considered are for pre-exploit balance, pretty straightforward. You had one NearX, you receive the equivalent of one new NearX, so basically you maintain the same ratio as before. There are some examples on the forum there. The bit that I'm most interested about, because I see a lot of people asking, is the exchange rate for the people that performed swaps on Ref Finance or Jumbo. So here people are going to be reimbursed the amount of Near that they swapped, not the amount of NearX that they received, but the amount of Near that they swapped. So on the two examples on the blog post, we can see that if somebody swapped 13.27 Near, they're going to be reimbursed 13.27 Near, not the 1700 whatever NearX that they received. This makes perfect sense. Look, I believe that if the protocol is assuming the responsibility and the liability, and they're obviously going to incur personal loss to cover the users for this exploit, because obviously the exploiters still run with the money, we should be honest and grateful, and you put 1 year in, you get 1 year back. It wouldn't really make sense for people to want to get 1,725 NearX of the project's treasury when you only put in 13. Let's cover the losses. Let's try to put everyone to the place where they would have been before the exploit. So I think that makes sense. I'm pretty happy that they're doing it this way. The reality is, I don't think they're going to pay the NearX at the rates that people exchange anyway. And they could have easily said, we're just not going to pay to anyone that swapped. That's not our responsibility. They could have flipped that over to Ref, or they could have just assumed that everyone was evil and just not paid anyone. So I'm pretty happy with this outcome. On the blog post, there is also a Google spreadsheet where you can already go and see the accounts and how much Near they will be receiving and all the transactions that they performed. If you performed any transactions on Ref or on Jumbo, please go and check that your account has been included and that all the transactions involving your Near have been included. The team has also included a third link to a form. All this will be on the show and on the comments section below, so that you can include if there are any discrepancies. So in the event that you have a wallet to perform the transaction and it wasn't included in the current snapshot and indexing, so if the spreadsheet is not correct, you have a communication channel here with the team. So far, so good. Moving forward, there will be a contract migration. And I guess the last thing I want to mention before we go is that the current timeline is looking about 2 or 3 weeks for users to be able to access their new NearX and their Near tokens. It's not ideal. It is what it is. Team, thanks so much. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I often share videos on the latest trends and projects launching on the Near, Aurora, and Octopus ecosystems that are getting us closer to the 1 billion users on chain. If you like this, like, comment, subscribe, share, send me an NFT. I'll take anything, really. See you in the next one.